everyone, it's me, Ron. I finished my game. The Cold Climb is done. Download it now on itch. Please download it. I really hope you'll like it, and it's free, so why not? It took me about 5 months and I documented it here on this YouTube channel. The last 3 weeks were the hardest part. I just wanted to move on, and I just wanted to say, no more, I'm done with this project, but I soldiered through that, and it's finished. I didn't do everything. The music was by Quebi. Was it worth it? Yes, absolutely. I feel so satisfied now it's done. But I think it's important that if you are trying to finish your first game, your expectations are properly managed. So let's just dive into the basics of how I finished. I worked on it for 1 to 2 hours a day, sometimes even just 30 minutes, sometimes even less than that. I always did a little every day, and I tried to have no 0% days, with one exception near the end where I was feeling really tired, and it just didn't make any sense. But yeah, apart from that, I always worked on it. I used tutorials for stuff I didn't know how to do. For example, I strongly recommend Heartbeast for pixel art stuff. His stuff on Udemy is really, really good. And I recommend Sean Spalding for GameMaker Studio 2 tutorials. His stuff is all on YouTube. I also used an engine. I used GameMaker Studio 2. From what I hear and from what I've used, Godot is also really good. Unity is of course very popular, but really I'm just making little hobby projects, and it's too much really for what I need. So yeah, those are my recommendations for how to get things finished. Is to use tutorials, work on it a little bit at a time, and use an engine if you can. Something else to bear in mind is taking criticism. Originally, this game was part of the GMTK Jam 2020. The jump was on a timer because the theme was out of control. However, after I had a short feedback session, which was done by Sean Spalding on Feedback Friday number 5, the timer jump pretty much had to go. It was getting in the way and it was frustrating. There were good portions of time where the player was just waiting for the jump to happen, and it was just causing huge frustration. Instead, the levels then focused on jumping and climbing instead, which was a huge improvement. It made the levels much more fun. And also I had some final criticism towards the end, where some character physics needed improving and some level design tweaks were needed as well. I cannot stress enough how much taking criticism matters for improving your game. Playtesting is key for finishing your first game. For those of you who have been around and have been on this channel for a while, you remember that after 2 months the game was technically finished. All the levels were in, all the obstacles were in, and everything was ready to go. But I spent 3 whole months polishing. And that sounds like a lot, but it really is quite necessary. As mentioned before, there were some level design tweaks and some character physics tweaks that needed to be made, but also the game was a mixture of resolutions, and the snow and fire effects didn't look very good at the start, and the cutscenes were very static with no sound and especially no music. It makes a huge difference to have that kind of thing in your game, and it really is worth putting in that extra time to make sure that you have them in your game. So with all that being said, is there anything I would do differently? Is there anything I would advise you, if you're trying to finish your first game, that you should do differently? And the answer is yes. I developed my game backwards in a way. I put together some very basic mechanics and some very basic level design, and then went to town developing lots of levels and lots of different features. I would strongly recommend that you get your mechanics down first. Movement is very important. My jump was too floaty, the gravity is too slow, and the coldness wasn't really very impactful. And all of this meant that my level design just wasn't as interesting as it could have been. The level design was just too slow to ramp up, and too few obstacles to keep it interesting, especially in the beginning. And also, graphics, I suppose, could have been done better, but I think that's more something I'll get better with over time. So yeah, I would advise you, if you're trying to finish your first game, to focus on your mechanics and your level design first. Don't do what I did and just produce a whole bunch of levels when your mechanics are still very much a work in progress. So, what's the next game going to be? Well, I've been dying to try this next project. It's going to be called Salvager. It's going to be about salvaging spaceships. It's going to be a top-down, almost Hotline Miami-esque perspective. You're going to be restoring power to systems, saving people who are in like little isolation pods, maybe even some puzzle combat. And you'll also have your own little ship that goes from wreck to wreck. The reason why I want to do all of this is it's going to have a very scalable design. I'm going to make it one level at a time so I can play test sooner. But obviously I'm taking a break because it's Crimbo, yo, and I want to have a bit of a rest, and also work has ramped up quite significantly lately. So, how is this channel going to change? You may have noticed that I stopped doing the weekly devlogs towards the end of this project. And I think that's because they struggle to remain interesting. They have an exponential fall off over time because there just isn't something interesting happening every single week. They're useful for the developer to make sure a project's staying on track, but they're not very interesting for the audience unless you really know what you're doing. I'm trying to move towards videos with themes and some light scripting. So what I've worked on for this video is I've tried to use a system of PowerPoint presentation slides to see if that helps more instead of just shooting from the hip. And I think I'll try to improve my thumbnails as well. Maybe there's a tutorial for that.